Hello, well wishers, and welcome to my channel Aspiring Minds. Today, I welcome you to a Spooktacular series, The Canterville Ghost, and this is Chapter 1 by Oscar Wilde. So grab your virtual seats and let's begin. To tell you about Oscar Wilde, he was an Irish writer born in 1854. He was a playwright, poet and a novelist and is known for writing very famous works, and The Canterville Ghost is indeed very popular. I remember studying it. I think it was a part of my ICSE syllabus as one of the short stories. Okay, so let's begin. So who are the major characters in this chapter? We have Mr. Hiram B. Otis. He's an American minister who purchases the Canterville Chase. We have Mrs. Otis. She's the wife of Mr. Otis, known for her strong constitution and spirit. We have Washington Otis. He is the eldest son of Mr. and Mrs. Otis, and he is very confident and practical. We have Miss Virginia E. Otis. She's the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Otis. She's very adventurous and brave. We have the twins. They are the mischievous sons of Mr. and Mrs. Otis. Now this is the Otis family. Apart from this, we have Lord Canterville. He is the previous owner of the Canterville Chase, and we will see in the very beginning of the chapter itself how he is warning Mr. Otis about the presence of a ghost in the Canterville Chase. And we have Mrs. Umney. She is the housekeeper of the Canterville Chase, and she warns the Otis family about the presence of ghosts towards the end of chapter 1. It's very strange, but The Canterville Ghost is actually a comedic story written by Oscar Wilde in the year 1887. It tells the story of an American family, the Otises, who move into Canterville Chase, an English mansion which is haunted by a ghost. The story is going to comment on both the American and the British cultures, including how they have a different perspective about the supernatural elements and the clash between old and new values. So the central message of this chapter 1 revolves around doubt and belief in the supernatural. Mr. Otis and his family, representing the modern American values, dismiss the idea of the existence of ghosts, while the British aristocracy, represented by Lord Canterville, holds on to the traditional beliefs in the supernatural, and they believe that yes, a ghost exists. So let's see what the story is about. We have Mr. Hiram B. Otis. He's an American minister who purchases the Canterville Chase or the Canterville Mansion despite getting warnings that the house is haunted. Lord Canterville, the previous owner, informs Mr. Otis about the presence of a ghost that constantly haunts the mansion. However, dismissing all these warnings, the Otis family, including Mr. Otis, Mrs. Otis, their children Washington, Virginia and the twins, arrive at the Canterville Chase. They are greeted by Mrs. Umney. She is the housekeeper who shares the history of the ghost and the blood stain which is there in the sitting room of the house. Washington Otis, the eldest son, dismisses this idea of any kind of supernatural warnings which are being given to him, and he attempts to clean that blood stain using a cleaning product. His actions demonstrate how the family has no doubt at all about the existence of ghosts. He says, "This is all nonsense. Pinkerton's champion stain remover and Paragon detergent will clean it up in no time." And before the terrified housekeeper, Mrs. Umney, could do anything about it, he rapidly falls onto his knees and he starts cleaning the floor incessantly. In a few moments, there is no trace of the blood stain that can be seen on the floor. What does he say? "I knew Pinkerton would do it," as he looked round at his admiring family. But no sooner did he utter these words, there is a terrible flash of lightning in that somber, quiet room. And Mrs. Umney, she faints after seeing this. As I mentioned, that as soon as he finishes clearing up the blood stain, there is a thunderstorm that strikes after Washington's attempt, causing Mrs. Umney to faint and warning the family that there is trouble waiting for them. Mr. Otis, however, remains very doubtful about it, and he says that, he dismisses this entire scenario, saying that it is merely because of the change in climate outside. That is why we have a thunderstorm here. Otherwise, Mrs. Umney's warnings have no importance. However, she warns the family about the haunted nature of the house. However, the Otis family remains unaware, or rather ignorant, of this whole scenario. Mrs. Umney says, "I have seen things with my own eyes, sir, that would make any Christian's hair stand on end, and many a night I have not closed my eyes in sleep for the awful things that are done here." However, we see how Mr. Otis dismisses this, and he says, "Let us seek the blessings of God," and we are not going to talk about it any further. After this, we see that the old housekeeper trotted to her room because she's seeing that it is no point explaining the whole situation to the Otis family, because they are completely in disbelief of the presence of ghosts. Chapter 2 begins with the Otis family noticing a blood stain on the floor once again, despite their attempts to clean it. And they say that it is finally, they are starting to believe, is the happening of that ghost. It is he who is doing it again and again, because see what Washington says. "I don't think it can be the fault of the Paragon detergent," said Washington, "for I have tried it with everything. It must be the ghost. He keeps rubbing it for 3 mornings and he realizes that the blood stain keeps appearing again and again." We see that the family becomes increasingly interested in the presence of the ghost, with Mr. Otis reconsidering whether he was actually doubting the presence of the ghost, and at the same time, Mrs. Otis thinks of joining a society which is dedicated to studying about the supernatural occurrences. Mrs. Otis joins the Psychical Society. After this, the family goes out for a drive and returns home very late in the evening, and they even have a light supper when they have gone out. While they were on this outing, they engage in very common conversation, like very usual general conversation happens, and they do not talk about the ghost at all. However, Mr. Otis is suddenly woken up by a strange noise that he hears, and it is at this time that he meets Sir Simon, who appears as a terrifying figure. Mr. Otis offers the ghost a lubricator for his noisy chains, which offends Sir Simon. To tell you the exact details, as mentioned in the text, it was exactly 1 o'clock when everything was calm. Mr. Otis suddenly woke up. He felt his pulse. He was not feeling feverish, but he had heard the strange noise which was continuing. He could hear the sound of footsteps. He puts on his slippers, takes a kind of a file out of his dressing case, and he opens the door. Right in front of him, he sees an old man of terrible aspect. To tell you about the description of the ghost, he was an old man of terrible aspect. His eyes were as red as burning coals. Long grey hair fell over his shoulders in matted coils. His garments, which were of antique cut, were soiled and ragged, and from his wrists and ankles hung heavy manacles and rusty gyves. Now you can imagine over here, if I may give a reference to a Hindi movie, Bhootnath, the appearance of Amitabh Bachchan. This is a little similar to that in appearance over here. Now Sir Simon is extremely angry when he is told by Mr. Otis to take that lubricator and to lubricate his chains. The bottle that is given to him, it is called Tamine Rising Sun Lubricator. Immediately after this, we see it is mentioned in the text that the ghost fled down the corridor, means he rushes down in anger down the corridor, and he is uttering hollow groans and emitting a ghastly green light, because this is something which is very, very new for him. He has never been face to face with such a situation. And at the same time, a pillow is thrown by one of the Otis children at him. He then goes through the walls into a secret chamber, that is his hiding place. After this, Sir Simon reflects on the past activities of how he has scared people in the past and the disrespect he feels from Otis' family's treatment of him, and therefore he wants to take revenge from them. So in chapter 2, we see how the Canterville Ghost continues to explore the comedic clash between the rational American mindset of the Otis family and the supernatural presence of Sir Simon Canterville, while also dealing with the themes of cultural clash, satire and pride. In chapter 2, we see a list of incidents which show Sir Simon's long history of haunting the past inhabitants of the Canterville Chase. We have Sir Simon frightening the Dowager Duchess into a fit as she stood before the mirror in her lace and diamonds. He had induced hysteria or madness among the housemaids. He had terrified the rector. He blew out the rector's candle as he returned late one night from the library, leading the rector to being under the care of Sir William Gull for nervous disorders. He caused Madame de Trollemaque's illness, as she suffered from brain fever for 6 weeks after waking up one morning to find a skeleton reading her diary in her armchair by the fire. We also see that Lord Canterville was found choking in his dressing room with a playing card, the knave of diamonds, halfway down his throat. He confessed before dying that the ghost had made him swallow, revealing his guilt. We also see that a butler shot himself in the pantry after seeing a green hand tapping at the window pane. These are very funny incidents. And lastly, we see Lady Stutfield had to wear a black velvet band around her throat to conceal the mark of 5 fingers which were burned into her skin. She eventually drowned herself in the carp pond at the end of King's Walk. So all these reveal that the Canterville Ghost had been up to a lot of mischief in the past. However, now Mr. Otis and his family are also having doubts about the existence of the ghost. So that's it from this video. I hope you liked it. Do hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel for more such future updates. Thank you for watching. Bye.